G'day guys, welcome back to another episode. A few more changes on the coupe this time, and also got some merchandise updates. I picked up a drivetrain. So I picked up a cheap drivetrain to try and get this thing back on the road. Borrowed that Cleveland from Graham. It is pretty sketchy inside, so I'm going to give it a bearing roll and do the intake manifold gasket. I have Jared here. He's going to be doing the bearing roll for me while I get into this single rail, which I also bought nice and cheap. It's just a 6-cylinder single rail. The bell housing is for a top loader, so there's one bolt that is wrong, so I'm going to drill and tap that out, get that sorted. Went down to the wreckers and picked up a AU Falcon diff out of a ute. Fits in there quite nicely. So the reason why I've gotten rid of a few things, like top loader, engine's obviously going, if you haven't already seen that up for sale, and sold the diff as well, is because I'm going to pull my finger out and actually try and get my new engine in, not the 427 but a 7.3 Godzilla. Been thinking for quite a while about them, and I've always wanted to do a two-door pillarless V8 car with a top mount supercharger, and it's actually quite hard to get a top mount set up for the 427 Cleveland. So the 7.3 litre Godzilla's off the shelf, Whipple dual supercharger setup. Yes, you can go a 671 charger on a Cleveland, but they're so a bit bigger, bulkier, out the bonnet, and you'd have to go like an 871 or a 1071 to sort of be able to support that cubic inch. But yeah, with the 7.3 litre Godzilla, Whipple do one, Harrop do one now as well. So yeah, there's some good, modern, more efficient superchargers out there that'll fit under the bonnet. So in the meantime, so I can keep enjoying this car, this whole drivetrain, and that engine that I'm borrowing from Graham, thanks mate, is pretty much costing me $650, and this thing will be back on the road, and hopefully out at a few more days, and yeah, enjoying it. Jared's straight into the bearing roll. Just got the sump off, and this engine's definitely seen better days, but this is sort of was expected when I got it off Graham. This is the one that he did on YouTube called How Not to Rebuild a Cleveland, and that's why I'm doing the bearing roll on it, because the bearings are absolutely cactus. Here's the number one main bearing that's coming out, and as you can see on this edge, that's pretty cactus. Quite don't look too bad, but yeah, this is why I wanted to do a bearing roll, because this is actually technically Graham's brother's engine, and he was okay for it to do this, but he just wanted to make sure that the rods and crank didn't get damaged. This is sort of going to fail that pretty quick, so this is why I'm definitely doing a bearing roll on it. Rings are new, heads have been tidied up, new head gaskets, and also valve stem seals have been done on it. The bores are pretty pitted. Graham did run a dingleberry hone through it, try and tidy it up a little bit, but yeah, I'm not real too concerned about that, because if the pistons and block fail, well, didn't seem to worry Graham's brother that much either. So yeah, as long as the crank and rods are good, so new bearings going in. So while Jared's doing that bearing roll, I'm going to get started into this gearbox, and the first thing I'm going to have to do is get the extra hole here. Now, putting it up on a crate, because the input shaft to the gearbox will bottom out in the ground if you try and do this on the ground. So we're going to set it up, mark where the hole is, get the drill out, and I'm going to tap it rather than some people do a bolt and nut, but obviously the nut's going to have to be on the inside, and that just makes it hard that if you ever want to pull just the box out without worrying about the bell housing, you can still just access the bolts and pull it out without having to worry about a nut that's captive on the backside. Did find a little bit while Joe was pulling this apart. In the journal, just there, that bit of crap sitting there, and the crank doesn't look real good. So we're chucking it all together anyway. Graham knows that it is the way it is, and so does his brother. So new bearings gone in. We did have a bit of a stitch up where I saw the photos of the bearings saying that they were standard, which they are on the big ends, but the mains aren't. So I do have to go and get some new bearings tomorrow to be able to do those ones. And then yeah, we'll be able to button up all of this then. So I've got new crank seal as well to go in. In the meantime, we're going to do the intake manifold, get that resealed because Graham doesn't have a good run at them, and yeah, we'll get that all happening as well. So that little bit that we found in that journal was actually a bit of rubber. I'm thinking possibly might have been some of the crank seal. Looks like it had a bit of a lip on it sort of thing, but yeah, could have come from anywhere really. But did end up going through the oiling system into that journal. You can see here, it's quite wet around these areas and quite wet inside the intakes too. So that seal definitely wasn't working. But my other concern is in the back corner here. See, it's quite gritty and pasty. So, in all realness and honesty, this does need a full rebuild and overhaul. But, as I said, it's going to be a junker. Fast forward a little bit more, and after being stuffed around a little bit, unfortunately, by the parts stores, finally got my 10th hour bearings that I'm needing for this engine. I've already done the intake manifold, done the gasket, so I'll flip that back up the other way and carrying on with this, doing this bearing roll. So basically I'm going to show you what a bearing roll actually is, and you'll figure out why they call it a bearing roll. So I'm going to do my absolute best to do this without showing too much shadow and whatnot. So as you can see, you got your bearing sitting there, and over here as well. This side, you can see just there that we have that keyway of the bearing. So that bearing is not going to be able to go down that way. It will in fact have to be pushed from this side down, and it'll roll back up over here. So what I normally do, if you really want to be careful, obviously you can see the state of this crankshaft. It's not real flash, so I'm not real concerned, but generally on your screwdriver you get a nice flat thin blade, get some electrical tape, wrap it around to protect the crankshaft, but you generally tap there and you can see it come up on the other side. From here then I get a seal pick. You can also use your screwdriver if you want, but you can lever that bearing and keep walking it out. I'm sure there's probably some quicker ways from people, but this is the way I do it. Sometimes you can get lucky and actually rotate the crankshaft, and that will help walk the bearing out as well. And once you're at the end, that'll come off just like that. Yeah, that bearing doesn't look too bad. It's not great, but so let's put a little bit of oil on there. Now the new bearing is going to have to go in basically reverse of what we did. That's mainly because of that keyway tab down the bottom there that stops your bearings from rotating. Push that in. Now that's a little bit tough. Like I said, you can rotate the crankshaft. So I'm gonna hold that there. And we'll be even. And that's it. That is how you do a bearing roll. Now we'll continue doing it for the rest of them. Get this one all buttoned up, get the sump on. Also be doing a new rear crankshaft seal as well. That's pretty much done the same as a bearing roll. So yeah, you'll sort of roll that in, roll it out. Make sure you go the right way with the lip as well. And all I do is just put a little bit of silicone on the ends to help them seal as they join together. And it's best, say that's where your cap is, have the main seal a little bit offset so that the joins aren't exactly where the joint of the cap is. Oil's in, oil filter is on. I've got a new one of those little cap filters, so nice and compact. Plus also because I'm just running it in with those new bearings, so I'm happy to use a nice cheaper little oil filter. Now I'm going to prime it up, make sure we're getting good oil pressure, and what I'm going to do is have the test stand here. I'm going to pull the line out of the back. This goes to the oil pressure gauge and drop that into this engine. Then I can prime it with my priming tool, as you can see here. Now on the end I have ground that down because there's two different distributor shaft sizes. It does come to suit the bigger diameter, so I had to grind it down to be able to fit into the other smaller blocks. So yeah, I'm going to put the drill on that, run it, and then that'll make sure you're getting all your oil pressure correctly to where you want it before you start it up. Modern utes and wagons is that disc brake and the saddles are the same width as the old school ones, so that goes on perfectly. You do have to change a bit of a setup for the park brake and also brake lines. You want to try and get the hose that comes with this diff and then adapt it later on, because they use a banjo style fitting rather than going straight into the caliper. So yes, but other than that, goes in pretty good. Drive shaft will be a bit of an issue as well, but I've got a couple of different spares I'll try and work out up in the rafters. So I'll try and work out to see if I can use a standard 6-cylinder one that come out of the coupe, and maybe that'll fix by changing the yoke ends. Well, I'm going to call that one a wrap there, guys. Basically this video was just a little bit of a way to show that you don't have to spend $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 on a gearbox, then more on an engine, more on a diff. I haven't spent $1,000, so this is pretty much get it back on the road for under $1,000, and it will be. So yes, so a couple of little nitty gritty parts, but I've pretty much got everything just laying around as spare parts in the shed. So now I'll be able to enjoy this on the road probably for the next year or so until I buy my Godzilla engine, because when I do that, there'll be a few other things that I've got to do. I've got to choose my transmission, which will be a manual still, I'll be saying that, but I've got to buy something that can hold up to the horsepower. Got to buy my wheels I want. I've just thrown some crappy 12 slows on there for the time being just to get it around, and I'm going to change my front end and get rid of the old 1960s early technology of steering. So I get rid of steering box and probably do a weld-in front end kit. So yes, plenty more work, plenty more parts to buy and stuff like that as well. So, but I'll eventually get there. Also, as I said at the start of the video, do have some merchandise now. Got some t-shirts and some stickers and that made, and we'll be throwing other things up as they come, jumpers and long sleeves and stuff like that too. So keep an eye out for them. Go have a look at the Facebook page I've got, Jetski's Garage, and you can also check it out on Instagram, Benny Jetski, and yeah, then you can keep up to date with everything that's coming and as it comes along. In the meantime, thanks very much again for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and if you have anything else to say, leave a comment, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers, guys.